In this episode, we talk about holiday lights, building a network on your house, and making the lights go blinkety-blink.
My name's Bruno. Hi.
Alright, so today we're going to talk about holiday lights. If you've ever seen those computer animated Christmas displays at people's houses where the thousands of lights are all synchronized to the music, you may wonder how that's done. About 10 years ago, I started decorating our house, and being a technically inclined person, I gravitated towards computer controlled light. As you do research, you start to realize there are different ways and different protocols that you can use to control your lights. 10 to 15 years ago, we didn't have all of the protocols in place that were affordable to the consumer market to be able to control individual lights. Today though, everybody's using RGB, and there's a few different technologies that you can use to actually control the lights on your house. So whether you build the board yourself or you go find a commercial product that will allow you to talk to that device and control individual pixels, it's complex and it needs some forethought to understand what your plan of attack is. When you start looking at purchasing those types of lights, if you go to a consumer outlet, say like Home Depot or something, and you try to purchase RGB lights that have coordinated patterns and stuff, you'll find that they're pretty pricey and expensive. And that's why the DIY community developed around that culture of people that wanted displays that were affordable. They wanted more pixels, more colors, more lights at a price that they could afford. Get the cost per channel down to a reasonable amount. So then they started coming up with their own hardware devices. So these are devices that allow you to connect them to your computer. This is something that was called a pixel net, and it would allow you to communicate to, say, a power distribution board, which would then control your lights through something like this, which is a smart string controller. You connect it to your pixel net and you connect it to your lights. When you look at the industry and what types of lights are available, you'll find that there are things like strips. And a strip is really just a silicone encased strip of RGB lights that has a little computer chip every pixel, and it allows each of these lights to be controlled on an individual basis. And so when you plug that into here, now I can control any of the lights in this strip. These come in different formats, so if you didn't want a strip, you could use something called pixels or nodes, and those are really just the same thing as a strip, but they're connected by wires, and they put the chip right inside the LED itself. So now we have these sort of form factors where we could string these lights in a more traditional way around your house and still be able to control each individual light by way of this controller, which is connected to a main communication device and a power distribution board, and then ultimately back to the computer. So you start to see that we're building out a network. You have a large computer that plays back commands to this controller, which then sends it out to individual strings, which tell individual lights to turn on and off. So we're just building a network and overlaying it on top of our house. If you don't like strips and you don't like pixels, then you can do something yourself and make something like this. This is something I made where I took these nodes, which are 3 inches on center. I went and got a protective plastic housing that you use for fluorescent bulbs, and then I put a piece of coroplast inside there, drilled out holes so they're all perfectly aligned. They have connectors on either end. Then on the back side you can see it's really just the nodes that are wired all together. And so this allows me to have like modular parts that I can outline my house with that are waterproof, they're easy to connect and disconnect, and then they're easy to store. Makes it really easy to put these up on the house, and they're all perfectly straight and aligned. And so you get the sense that there's a lot of options. When you invest in DIY technology, you have to expect it to change. It changes on a yearly basis. People want more lights, brighter lights, bigger lights, and so this pattern has kind of gone by the wayside. And things like Falcon controller came along that make things a little simpler. So you have a Falcon Pi player, which just runs on a Raspberry Pi, which is a little microcomputer. And it can communicate then to a power distribution board, which runs off of the power of a computer power supply. And it's able to have 16 of these strings connected up to it. So this is essentially 16 little smart strings embedded into this one circuit board. So if I put this in front of my house, then I can connect 16 of these pixel strings around my house. Each string can have 128 bulbs on it. Since they're RGB, each bulb has 3 channels. So there's a red channel, a blue channel, and a green channel. And so if you multiply it 128 by 3 channels, you're going to end up with around 380 channels per string. And when you start considering that that particular device can handle 16 strings, then the channel counts get enormous. And so being able to program something that's meaningful with that amount of channels gets more and more complex. Each year, the options to do that are evolving. So So there's industrial software and commercial software, but they're really out of the price range of your casual DIY home decorator. These DIY devices, some of them use DMX, some of them use proprietary protocols. It's really just about how much data can you cram and multiplex together to get out to the largest number of pixels most efficiently. DMX is traditional and works very well, and it's fault tolerant. This, on the other hand, the Falcon Pi Player has a proprietary file format, and it sends it out over to its distribution board to communicate with its smart string. It's a little bit different, but it's really accomplishing the same task. So that said, when it comes time to create the sequence and to turn on individual lights, there are only a couple options really out there. You can get solutions out of the box from companies like Lightorama or Animated Lighting, but if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to find there's very few options for open source programming of all of these lights. I spent 8 to 10 years developing a software application that made that easy. It allows you to create RGB blends and overlay video onto your wall, and I had a lot of fun developing that. We built a community around that, and it really just got to the point to where it was time for me to move on to continue growing. That product's no longer available, but there are other open source projects out there that you can leverage, like X-Lights and Nutcracker, and you just have to search around. There's a product called Vixen too that also allows you to do sequencing. But just know that when it comes to designing the lights you want to use on your house, then it may be important to agree to the type of lights that you want to use for consistency. It's important to consider if you use something like the Falcon 16 player, you can also incorporate DMX, and when you incorporate DMX, then that opens a world of opportunities. You can have 3-axis movers with gobos projecting all sorts of lights and effects with strobes and lasers and all sorts of really cool stuff, and you can also incorporate your smart strings. So there's lots of options if you incorporate something like the Falcon 16 that allows you to use multiple protocols. So things have changed and advanced in the industry, but let's go over to the computer and check out the software that I developed years ago that could allow you to sequence thousands of RGB lights and make some really cool effects. Alright, so sequencing the lights is probably one of the most complex challenges. That was what really got me into it. There really wasn't a lot of creative tools out there that were affordable. Sure, you could drop like 10 or 30,000 to get something that professionals use, but if you just want to sequence your Christmas lights, it's really not going to be cost effective. So I wrote my own a while back, and I got to a point to where I just couldn't manage and support it the way I wanted to, so I handed it over to another company. Let's show you some of the features that I developed and the last version that I released, which is still one of the most capable software solutions out there. It allows you to overlay video onto your RGB lights, and you could use patterns and kaleidoscopes and all sorts of really neat macros to create comprehensive effects that would take forever to do manually. So let's check that out now. I'll do a little time lapse. Not going to go into too much detail, but just know that there's software out there that can program RGB that makes it a little bit easier. Once you've tackled the network and you've decided on the lights and your house is ready to be programmed. So once you've sequenced your lights and you're ready to actually play it back on your house and test it out, then it's usually just a process of exporting it to the correct format, uploading it to your controller, and then going outside and checking it out. Let's look at some of my previous sequences.
It's called Christmas.
Through the years we all will be together if the fates allow.
So that's it. Piece of cake. It's not too difficult to actually computer control your lights, but it's expensive and a time investment to build the network of lights and controllers on your house to do what you want to do. So just know that you're up against some steep competition, and if you're up for the challenge, the technology is here. I'll put some links in the description to some of my favorite places to go to get more information about this, as well as a couple links to where to get the pixel nodes, where to get the RGB strips, and more information about the DIY community. And now's the perfect time to start thinking about your display. A month away is Halloween, and then we're in full steam ahead for the holidays to come. With that, enjoy the holiday season, stay safe because you are dealing with some high voltage electricity, but by all means have fun.